college campus.
And he shot the people right next to us, so we were all running, we were hiding in the bushes, and there was debris flying from the bullet shots right next to us.
Terror, shock, and panic. On News and Review today, a gunman attacks students in Montreal. Hello, I'm Carla Robinson. It's such a terrible thing to happen anywhere, let alone in a school. Someone shooting at students, randomly gunning them down, unleashing a shockwave of fear and panic, revulsion and grief. It happened at another Canadian school, prompting questions about bullying, gun control, and policing the internet. The target was Dawson College in downtown Montreal, across the street from the old Forum hockey arena. It's what's called a cégep, with 10,000 students, many preparing to go to university. CBC reporter Nancy Wood reported on what followed next.
It took only a few instants to turn these streets around Dawson College into a scene of utter pandemonium. Inside was a gunman, dressed in a long black trench coat. Outside, police officers in bulletproof vests raced in, and ambulances lined up. Students and teachers fled. There was confusion. Was the shooting over or not? Was there one suspect, or three, or even four? Had he left the building, or was he barricaded inside? For a couple of hours, there were no answers, but plenty of eyewitness accounts.
We were sitting having a cigarette, and then there was a guy walking with a huge black trench coat and huge black boots with this retarded haircut, okay, and he had a huge machine gun. He's walking down in broad daylight with the gun. No one says anything to him, and then he started shooting at Alexis Neon. It was a machine gun, and he shot the people right next to us, so we were all running, we were hiding in the bushes, and there was debris flying from the bullet shots right next to us. Like, we saw all kinds of people getting shot outside, and then he walked in the school and started shooting everyone else.
We were in English class, and they looked outside the window and they saw someone get shot, and some guy next to the window said there's someone bleeding outside. So we all crowded around the window and we were freaking out, and then the next thing you know, there's people passing by the door of the classroom, and this girl opens the door and says, "Guys, like, there's no alarm, but you have to leave the building. Everyone's evacuating." So we run outside the building, and outside of it there's police cars, and like to my right there was police cars and an ambulance, and there was a guy lying on the floor with like a sheet over him, and I saw like all his friends were like holding him, and there was blood everywhere.
The police were there. There was two policemen right on the scene, like when he shot the 3 shots, telling him to drop his weapon, blah blah blah, and I don't know the rest. Then everybody got on the ground and started slowly going. Then he shot 3-4 people while we're going towards the cafeteria.
This woman says she heard at least 15 shots. Others reported up to 20 shots. Police say they were in the building within 4 minutes of the gunman entering. One student captured what happened next with the camera on his cell phone.
Who shot that? You guys see the shot? Yeah, there were gunshots. Who are you pointing at? Pointing at the cell phone.
Students say the police were cautious because of the number of students in the vicinity.
The first policeman took charge of the situation and shoot in the direction of the suspect, and he died. The suspect died.
He was taken outside to be treated, but died at the scene. What was clear was how many lives were changed. One young woman died on the scene. Up to 20 were injured and transported to hospital. 8 were in critical condition.
We have cleared up the ICU. We have 8 beds that were cleared up in our intensive care unit to be able to receive all the patients coming out of the operating room. And all these patients coming out of the operating room will be monitored very carefully for their injuries over the next 24 hours.
I saw a bunch of people on the ground. I saw blood everywhere. And I saw one of the guys on the floor, and he was holding, I guess, the gunshot wound.
When we arrived on the scene, there were 3 people shot down to the floor outside, and one of them was shot in the head, was in his blood. The lady was shot in the hip and an arm, and a little bit further down there was this young man that was hit with a bullet in the abdomen.
The killer was a 25-year-old man. He wasn't a student at Dawson College, and we may never know why he chose it for a target.
The question in everybody's mind, I believe, at this point is why. Why he did what he did, we don't know. We're trying to delve into his background, try to find out who this individual is, to try to figure out what he did.
Kim Veer-Gill left behind an online calling card, a chilling photo gallery and blog on the vampirefreaks.com website. He glorified guns, hate, and a video game modeled on the 1999 massacre at Columbine High School in the United States. He had obtained his guns legally, a semi-automatic rifle, a handgun, and a shotgun. All were properly registered in his name.
Obviously just observe that laws we have didn't prevent this tragedy, which is why our government will be in the future for this, because of this incident and many others, looking to make our laws more effective.
Others, though, want the Prime Minister to halt his plan to scrap the government's registry for long guns.
We all recognize that even though there may be registries and controls, and that there will always be individuals in our societies who are very deeply sick in some instances, and we can't predict what they'll do. But if the registry could save a few lives because it's there, well, I think and it is there now. I mean, it is there now, then I think it's worth keeping.
It's shocking. I'm still mind blown.
This woman went to high school with Gill and his brothers.
Very reserved, loner, that was how they were. They didn't socialize with anyone, just kept to themselves, very reserved, picked on by others, but that's normal. Kids are mean, and that's what I thought, wow, I hope he didn't resent this all these years later.
This has happened before at other schools. In fact, it has happened so often that it is studied. Joanna Romeliotis reports now on what those studies have revealed.
The sirens, the shock, the carnage. École Polytechnique. Columbine High School. Now Dawson College. There is a disturbing refrain to all this.
Everyone around me got shot.
Schools as shooting grounds, where more often than not, a cold, calculated plan of vengeance unfolds with deadly results.
School shootings grab headlines because they tend to be so bold, so brazen, and cause so much panic. And while experts say there is no typical profile of the mind behind the trigger, there are some disturbing commonalities. The attacks are often meticulously planned, and more often than not, it's a gunman who is out for attention and revenge.
But they didn't just get angry, they were filled with absolute contempt.
Bullying expert Barbara Colaroso tracks what she calls common threads in school shootings.
Most of them have to do with young boys who were identified as loners, but really were isolated by their peers, were often very, very bright, and often repeatedly tormented by their peers.
Columbine was a defining moment in attempts to understand more about why that alienation turns violent. Shortly after Columbine, the U.S. Secret Service and the U.S. Department of Education commissioned a study to find ways to prevent another Columbine and try to identify the warning signs. Among 10 key findings, many attackers felt bullied, persecuted, or injured by others prior to the attack. That incidents of targeted violence at school rarely are sudden, impulsive acts, and that prior to most of them, other people knew about the attacker's ideas and/or plans to attack.
As we learned at Columbine, these were not monsters. These were very troubled human beings. And we have to, as an adult community, wake up to the signs.
The signs, Colaroso says, typically tend to culminate at key points of the school year, at the end of one term or at the beginning of another. Both Columbine and a fatal shooting in Tabor, Alberta, where a 14-year-old boy killed a fellow student, occurred in April. Experts say as the school year draws to a close, the shooter has built up an explosive bank of bad experiences. Or they say the shooter will project a sense of alienation on a particular school. Marc Lepin, who stormed Montreal's École Polytechnique, killing 14 women, felt the school's engineering department favored female applicants.
You take an individual who's got a history of many failures and difficulties in their personal life, and they'll relate to that to school setting at some level.
Dr. Martin Mrazek is an expert of adolescent violence. He says an overwhelming sense of anonymity, of irrelevance, drives shooters to seek the ultimate stage.
They're primarily focused on how do I get back? How are people going to notice this? How can I vent my frustration? And so that's what they're focused on. And so really there's almost a bit of a dissociation there.
And experts say they do that with little or no thought to the consequences. Joanna Brimiliotis, CBC News, Toronto.
The consequences this time might have been far worse if it weren't for the quick response of police. That was one of the lessons learned from the shooting 17 years before at Montreal's École Polytechnique, when 14 young women were murdered by a gunman named Marc Lepine.
After a while he came around and then he saw me. I was on the floor, but still he could see me.
And what did he do?
Well, he shot.
Back then, police remained outside waiting for tactical teams to arrive before going inside. That was protocol. Precious time was wasted. But at Dawson College, 2 policemen responded almost immediately.
In Montreal and other police departments, now we go inside. We go where the situation is bad, and we try to stop that situation.
So you don't wait for the SWAT team?
No, we don't wait for the SWAT team anymore.
After the shooting, some people asked if more shouldn't be done to monitor the internet, to spot people like Kim Veer-Gill before they can cause harm. CBC reporter Susan Ormiston explored that.
He left clues on the internet. Kim Veer-Gill strutted his obsessions and said he wanted to die in a hail of gunfire. His preferred epitaph: lived fast, died young, left a mangled corpse. And he did. He even played the role on an amateur-looking internet game, Columbine Massacre, a takeoff on the worst school shooting in American history. That cyber thumbprint prompted viewer Alan Abbott.
I found it really puzzling that this depiction, these pictures shown on a website, wasn't closely monitored by the police.
Well, Alan, first we turn to Paul Gillespie, a former cybercrime cop who was head of Toronto's child porn unit.
I think it's a lack of will, a lack of money, and ultimately a lack of resources that nobody's doing it because nobody wants to take responsibility for the internet.
He's an unabashed advocate of more monitoring, automated to recognize suspicious or disturbing messages on the internet.
In the form of robots or bots that can be programmed to look for certain things, identifiers, words spoken, and then once they saw something, they basically send a message back and notify an analyst or an officer to have a look at it to make a determination.
Big Brother? Maybe.
Is the internet and use of the public internet a right or a privilege? And if it is a privilege, I think people have to be held accountable and responsible for their criminal activity.
But hold on, those pictures aren't criminal, nor is anything Gill said in cyberspace as far as we know. Looking at kiddie porn on the internet is illegal. So is hate speech and uttering specific threats. But saying you simmer with anger and hate, as he did, and you admire first-person shooters is not illegal. And acting on that would change the balance of free speech. Not worth it, according to Michael Geist, an internet law professor at the University of Ottawa.
You know, we've got a series of laws, particularly from a constitutional perspective, that provide strong protections for free speech, and I'd submit that there are some very good reasons for that. We have to tread carefully before we engage in proactive monitoring and start trampling on potential free speech rights, privacy rights, and the like, for the sake of searching after, in a sense, the proverbial needle in a haystack.
And here's a thought: maybe an internet diary, even an evil one, is a good thing.
I think it's actually a benefit to society to have open networks in which you'll see thoughts that otherwise might be completely private in a person and therefore much harder to discern and to react to give that person help.
How do you stop something like this from happening again? As we've seen, some point to the internet. Others say tougher gun control measures would give society more protection. The gun registry didn't prevent Kim Veer-Gill from killing, but some people, particularly people in Quebec, argue it could prevent other deaths. For its part, the federal government has promised to make our gun laws more effective. And that's News in Review. I'm Carla Robinson. Thanks for watching.
Two, one, and liftoff.
A shuttle blasts off with a Canadian on board on his way to a big construction job.
Boy, that is pretty. That's what I see every day.
On News and Review today, return to the space station. Hello, I'm Carla Robinson. In early September, the Space Shuttle Atlantis blasted off its launch pad at Cape Canaveral, Florida. It was on a 12-day mission to the International Space Station orbiting the Earth. There were 6 astronauts on board, and one of them was Canadian Steve McLean, who was making his second trip into space, one he'd been waiting for a long time.
Mission Specialist Steve McLean. Have ignition and liftoff of Columbia.
McLean's first flight was in 1992, and from the moment he landed, he's been counting the days until his next launch.
Columbia out of communications at present with Mission Control.
But in 2003, the shuttle Columbia that had carried him into space the first time disintegrated as it returned to Earth and delayed his second flight by 3 years. It also delayed construction work on the International Space Station.
The original schedules that we thought we were going to achieve this year are going to be delayed.
The station should have been built by now and fully functioning as a giant space lab for scientists, a place where they could study the effects of zero gravity on things like health and aging. Instead, it might not be even finished before the shuttle fleet is retired in 2010. So this mission was an important one. The astronauts would use the latest robotic arm, the Canadarm2, to unpack and deploy a 16-ton truss and 2 giant solar panels. Before he left for Cape Canaveral, Steve McLean talked to the CBC's Heather Hiscox about what he'd be doing up there.
High above Earth, in a gigantic floating construction site, that's where Steve McLean is bound. And he's so excited about it, just seeing a model of the space station gets him fired up.
Which quadrant are you going to be working in?
We're going to be working just in front of this solar panel.
About where he's going to be and what he's going to do. First, operate the celebrated Canadarm2.
We reach into the cargo bay and pick up this very high technology piece of equipment, bring it over to the port side with the first Canadarm, and then I'm on the second one and I pre-position my arm and then pick it up. And to me, it's like a great Canadian handshake.
Day 5 of the mission is going to be pretty exciting for you, to say the least. Your spacewalk. You're first. Yeah. What do you imagine? What do you expect it's going to be like to step out?
Operating the arm has that tremendous sense of privilege I've been talking about. But going out for an EVA, this is a personal highlight.
EVA meaning extravehicular activity in space jargon. Which is spacewalk.
Spacewalk. I'll try to say spacewalk. It's, when you open the hatch and then step out of the space station, of the space station airlock, there's nothing around you. And as soon as you get out, you have this feeling that you're falling. And you are, because the space station falls around the Earth at the same curvature of the Earth itself. So you are falling. Plus...
into nothingness.
Into nothingness.
But first, he had to get up there, and that took a while. The launch was postponed 4 times by tropical storms and a series of technical glitches. But on September the 9th, all systems were go, and the shuttle finally blasted off. The CBC's Ron Charles was at the Kennedy Space Center when Steve McLean's big day finally arrived.
And here they come.
This morning, 6 astronauts finally took the walk that bad weather and technical problems had denied them for almost 2 weeks. They headed to the launch pad to board the Space Shuttle Atlantis.
Steve McLean now boarding.
Canadian astronaut Steve McLean waited 14 years for this day, his second trip into space.
T-minus 1 minute and counting.
After the final seconds were counted down,
2, 1, and liftoff.
Everything came together.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
NASA officials were thrilled.
What you saw today was a flawless count and a majestic launch, and it was tough to get here.
Tough because the launch was pushed back 4 times, making this one of the most delay-plagued missions in the history of the Space Shuttle program. Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield says such delays are a necessary part of making space travel safe.
Flying in space is hard. If you're willing to kill people, it's easy, but if you want to fly safely, flying in space is extremely difficult, and we do everything we can to make every launch as safe as possible.
Copy, we'll watch it.
That's why NASA officials used dozens of cameras around the launch pad and on the shuttle to watch closely for falling insulation foam from the external fuel tank. That's what caused the Columbia disaster 4 years ago.
So far, we didn't see anything in the region of highest concern, if you will.
Beautiful view of Atlantis.
This is to be a mission of firsts. Atlantis is delivering the first new section of the half-built International Space Station since the Columbia disaster. It includes solar arrays that will double the station's power. Steve McLean is the first Canadian back in space in 5 years. He'll perform his first ever spacewalk when he plays celestial construction worker next week to help attach the new section. McLean's wife says he's happy his long wait is now over.
This has been a long road with many detours, but they really did give us a nice launch, and we're just going to follow them very closely in the next few days.
Once Atlantis completes its 2-day trip to the space station, the hard work begins. Delivering and installing that new section will require 3 spacewalks in all. And while the astronauts have spent a lot of time training, it's been years since this type of work was last done. Ron Charles, CBC News at the Kennedy Space Center.
When Atlantis arrived at the space station, it did a backflip so the space station crew could examine the heat tiles on its belly. Then it docked with the station, and the shuttle crew were welcomed on board. Shortly after, Steve McLean used the Canadarm2 to install the giant truss. The next day, he went one step further. He spent more than 7 hours walking in space, working with an American astronaut on the 2 solar panels. Here again is the CBC's Ron Charles.
The work may be grueling and repetitive, but just look at the view.
Boy, that is pretty. That's something to see every day.
Steve McLean became just the second Canadian astronaut to see it like this when he took his first ever spacewalk this morning.
Steve McLean now at his 3rd work site.
McLean and U.S. astronaut Dan Burbank had to unscrew and tighten dozens of restraining bolts on a new set of solar arrays attached to the International Space Station. Once unfurled, the arrays will double the amount of power the station can capture from the sun's rays. The job didn't go perfectly. At one point, McLean lost one of the bolts.
Hey, on cover 8, a bolt is missing. Bolt 1 alpha. I did not see it go.
NASA wasn't very concerned about that or a bolt lost by another astronaut yesterday. McLean and his partner checked to make sure the bolts hadn't drifted into the mechanism that will turn the solar arrays to face the sun. While 350 kilometers below, McLean's family watched on a live feed at the Canadian Space Agency.
It's breathtaking. I cannot even imagine how you can describe that, being in his place right now.
You're very excited, but at the same time you're a little nervous for him. But I've seen him train so hard that I'm really happy for him, and just this is such a great adventure.
Vancouver astronomer David Dodge was also watching. He got up early to follow McLean's spacewalk on his computer.
I hope that Steve McLean took a few seconds out to look over his shoulders, to take in the grand picture of where he was, rather than just being a monkey wrench monkey putting the thing together.
He needn't worry. McLean is clearly enjoying his space experience. He even asked York University music professor David Mott to compose something for him to listen to as he looked out into space.
And he loved it.
he said, "That's it. You know, that's the sound. That's what it's like." So I was really excited about that.
The 7-hour spacewalk was not all work. At one point, McLean posed for a photo taken by Burbank with the Earth speeding by beneath them. The shuttle Atlantis is scheduled to bring McLean and his 5 crewmates home next Wednesday. Ron Charles, CBC News, Toronto.
But before they returned to Earth, the Atlantis crew had a bit of a scare when some mysterious objects were seen floating close to the shuttle.
Okay, we're seeing 3 or 4 objects.
It was hard to tell what they were, but there were fears that something might have been knocked loose and could have damaged the heat tiles.
NASA scientists say their best guess is that one of the objects was a piece of plastic filling that had been jammed between 2 heat tiles, and that another one might have been a plastic garbage bag, which